All right. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. The podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, I'm going to let our guest, who's also our co-host, tell us why we're here. So last time we talked on this podcast, I should have set it up a little better because I gave it so wide open. It's all my fault. I blame the Russians. That's the thing to do these days.
Yes.
But on our last podcast back in October, we recorded an episode when you were planning on doing a Kickstarter for Solarin Prime, and
Correct.
that didn't happen. So what happened between now and then? So that way they can put the rest of the episode that we'll attach this to in context.
Okay. The reason that I decided to go with direct sales on the company's website as opposed to doing a big fundraising on Kickstarter is I'm a fan. I'm still a fan of Kickstarter. So let me preface my statements with that. I found a lot of good creators out there and a lot of good stories, a lot of good comic books out there. The trend I'm seeing though is that people are these creators they're charging $10 just for a standalone 24-page floppy comic, and I was taking issue with it. I'm not spending $16 on a comic book. So I decided, and plus there's a lot of work that goes into a Kickstarter. It's almost like a second job. You're there every day updating, and you're spending at least 4 to 6 hours on Kickstarter at the end of your regular workday if you have a day job. Just trying to promote it. So what I decided to do with the direct sale, well, technically, I guess it's a pre-order now because I'm still waiting for the books to show up, was that I wanted to charge you $5 for the book, and then it's a flat rate of shipping of $4. So it's $9 because shipping prices are getting out of control. But I didn't want to have to put any extras on it to entice you to buy the book. The book should stand alone on its own merit. And that's the reason why I decided to go with direct sales. I didn't want to have to throw in posters or keychains or t-shirts or any of these other things just to get you to read this book. If you wanted to read this book, the cover's really cool. I like it. It what's the word I'm looking for? It pulled well. It sampled well. Everyone kind of liked it. Not kind of liked it. They did like it. They're like, oh, that's really cool. That pops. Because the color scheme went through a whole lot of changes as well. First it was like all blue. It was like too much blue. And they're like, oh, you need to throw something in there to, mix up the colors. I'm like, oh, you're absolutely right. Blue's my favorite color. So I didn't see it at first. You're always too close to the problem. So did a lot of focus groups. I've been spending months sending out to people, making revisions, changing dialogue, things like that. So, but the big reason is it's a comic book I think people should read. I think it's an all ages book, mostly. And I want the comic to either succeed or fail on its own merits. I don't want to entice people to buy it just so they get a t-shirt or a keychain or a sticker or a trading card or whatever. So, and I made a limited run of 200 copies. So after those 200 are gone, that cover that's on there right now it'll go away. I'll replace it with something else.
So is it going to be at some point in time available through Comixology or other digital platforms as well?
It will be. The thing with the quickest one to get it digitally out there is Drive-Thru Comics. They also do Drive-Thru RPG for those of you that do RPGs. They have Drive-Thru Comics. Comixology takes about 6 months to get on their platform. The problem with Comixology is that I'm not competing with indie creators anymore. I am creating with Marvel and DC and Image and Dark Horse and Dynamite and IDW. So I'm dealing with companies that bring in millions of dollars of revenue and print out thousands to hundreds of thousands of copies of their books. So it's real difficult to compete in that market. The direct sales are pretty good. Crowdfunding has always been the way to generate revenue and get your book out there, either through Indiegogo or Kickstarter. I'm starting to lean more towards Indiegogo. But yeah, like I want to put it out there in a digital format. If I could direct sell it on my website, as soon as I figure that out, because I'm not an IT guy, I'm not a computer guy, or I went to school for graphic design and I fell asleep during web design. So
so since you wrote this in October and we talked, which is when we recorded it, did you make any substantive changes to the story itself, or just the sort of the art?
No, the art has zero changes to it. I was going to release.
So just the coloring changed?
The coloring on the cover changed, and there's a lot of aliens in this. It's a alien focused book. You have one human being on there, and that's the protagonist. So he can talk, he can use his regional diction based on where he grew up. But the aliens, getting them to sound alien, and I took some pointers from you. I ran them through like several different language translators in different languages, and then redid them to English. So they would have that that weird context, that weird some languages have like their rules of language are different. Like the verb comes first, and then right. Adjectives and nouns and pronouns and things like that. So, and there's like 10 out of the many aliens that you see in the comic. There's like between 5 and 10 that have speaking lines. So I had to come up with 10 different speech patterns, and that took some work. Because the original script, I mean, the writer, he's amazing, but he was young when he wrote this. I think he had just turned 21 years old. So it was very, it coincided with someone of that age and how they say things.
Right.
So I had to make
no
some
golly
alterations
G's in there, huh?
No, there was a lot of like, yo, what's this, B? Stuff like that. Not to make fun of you, Trevor. I love you to death, man. You're a phenomenal writer. But no, some changes need to be made. So it sounded alien, like Yoda. Yoda sounds alien, so you got to have something like that, with a weird way of speaking. Or I had to go back and do some research and create words, which is really hard to do. I think that's harder than creating a character out of thin air, is creating a new word and what it means and what it pertains to. And then like each word almost has a backstory in itself. So, and that it was fun. It was fun to do as a creator, kind of like stretch my writing muscles a little bit, because I haven't written a comic book since 2015, like where I actually was the writer on it.
Yeah.
So I'm a little rusty. So it was good to kind of like stretch those muscles out again.
So what is the plan for future episodes, editions,
issues,
volumes? I guess issues. There we go.
Yeah, depending on the success of the direct sale campaign, if it's successful, we keep going. If not, then as a businessman, I have to reevaluate my model. Which sometimes you just have to go back to the well, and I'll go to crowdfunding again. But I'd really like to get away from having to. It almost feels like a bribe. It's like you would have a really cool T-shirt, and they really want the cool T-shirt. And they just happen to get the book with it. That book's never going to get read. It's going to sit somewhere, and they're going to proudly wear that T-shirt wherever they go. And
you can always do the T-shirts and sell them on merch too, because they're
absolutely
do your own merch.
My wife, the Mistress Stabby Stab, we're looking into getting either screen printing or a heat transfer machine for T-shirts, coffee mugs, things like that, so we can produce our own merchandising in house.
In-house. So just say something like Teesprings or Tiavanas, companies like that exist as well.
They do, and they take a huge cut.
Do they? Okay, I haven't.
They do. They take about 35%.
Okay, that's significant. But if they have audience, it'll get you eyeballs that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten.
Yeah, that's true, and they do kind of advertise it for you. Like you got to get enough people looking at it, and then they take notice. Like, oh, we should promote this. Yeah, but they don't always do that.
So are comics all pre-printed and then ordered, or do they do any print on demand for paper copies?
Okay, so here's the thing with that too. The company that Greco Printing, also known as Comics Wellspring, who's printing the comic books, they have a online store, like a print on demand. And it's not really a print on demand. It's what I do is I authorized 25 issues of my order to be separated and left in their warehouse.
Okay.
In case anybody wants to use their services. I'm not sure if I hit that click box, but I will start doing that. I have a feeling this issue is going to sell out. If it doesn't sell out online, it's definitely going to sell out at the Fanboy Expo in Las Vegas in late April.
When you do that that public appearance, are you going to be able to share that for us on the Facebook group so people and obviously your own social media, so people that want to show up and get a signed copy?
Absolutely. Signatures are always free, so all you got is the price of the book.
Yeah. So what was the hardest part of the final piece? Because I know part of what slowed you down was everything shutting down, the whole economy, working extra time at the border. Was that mostly what did it, or were there hiccups with the book itself?
No, it's mostly just kind of like your run-of-the-mill life situations that get in the way, and life now includes that new normal of economy shutdowns and things like that. And then it but I looked at it as an opportunity to actually go in there and do some more editorial stuff. The post-production, a lot of people skip over. They don't send it out. I had time. I had plenty of time. Like when I was this was supposed to launch in like November, December. I had some hiccups along the way. Had some creative differences with like letterers and things like that. I won't mention any names, but some people's personal values and standards get in the way of things because they don't understand it. So like the big thing was like, hey, you got to take these pages out because there's pornography in there. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is an all ages book. Where's the pornography? There's a guy in a shower having a PTSD moment. I mean, you and I have been there. Sometimes you're in the shower, you get to thinking, you're relaxed. Boom. Next thing you know, you're in the fetal position crying and you got soap on your nuts, but I tastefully covered up the naughty bits and he refused to work on it. I'm like, all right, well, fine. And
I hate to see how he reacts to a picture of Adam and Eve.
Oh, well, we'll talk about that off air because you will laugh so hard because of reasons. But no, this gave me a tremendous opportunity to put the book out into people that I know would give me the hard answers. They would give it to me straight, or like they said in the 60s, they would give me the straight dick. They tell it up. They tell me exactly what's wrong with it, what needed to be fixed, and what to be correct, and they're happy to help me out. So I could put the best product out there since I had the time. I might as well use it.
Yeah. So for instance, someone wants to buy the book because even if they don't have time to read it, they want to support you because they like what you're doing. Is there otherwise, besides just buying the product itself, is there any other ways they can support you? Do you have I know you said you don't do Kickstarter, but like a buy me a coffee, a Patreon, anything like that you do?
I do have a Patreon, and I haven't checked it in a while. Do they kick you off Patreon for non-use? I don't know.
I don't know. I know a lot of people left when they started censoring, but we don't get political here. If you add,
it's all about the art.
So if you add any of those sort of not crowdfunding, but those
sort of my Patreon, the way it's set up, it's it's really cheap. And it was really just to kind of like entice me through money, which sounds horrible to say, but to constantly, you got to feed the kids and really what the money was going towards. I had like one loyal patron for like $5 a month, like that bought me a couple of pencils, bought me lead, cause that's what it all went to, was to feed my art addiction as far as getting me supplies. So
no, there was more. He calls his wife Madam Stabby because she has a thing for knives, and I'm pretty sure some whetstones were bought and some sharpened knives,
and paint because she's a painter.
We don't judge,
and we don't judge. Yeah, so and that's all I live for, is trying to make her happy.
Good answer if she's listening. So
she's behind me with a knife right now.
If you set up any future ways where people can contribute to you to keep the art going, will you come back and let us know so we can update all the pages?
Absolutely. As soon as I figured that out, like I don't know the best avenue. I don't really keep my finger on the pulse like that. The best way to support me and my company right now is to go in there and buy a couple of comic books. I am I am in direct contact with the people that host my site, so I can figure out how to put digital copies on there. So like when they buy the digital copy, they get emailed to a link, and I don't have to worry about it.
I think BookFunnel does that, but I don't know if they do comics because that's a different. I mean, it should still be a PDF, right?
It's a PDF. I can convert it in because a lot of people use comic book readers now.
Okay,
kind of like
I didn't know that was a thing.
It is a thing. It's a CBR file. So it's individual images that are saved into a CBR file, which is nothing more than a modified zip.
So are they color readers or are they black and white when you read them on the?
No, they're color.
Cool.
They're color, and you can zoom in on them. You know, so if you have poor eyesight like I do, and you're reading it from a very small phone, or maybe your eyesight's really bad on a tablet, you can zoom into panel to panel. I think
that's why I love it.
It's been really cool. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a physical copy in my hand, but my eyesight's getting worse by the year, and I'm not getting any younger. So even with my glasses, I'm like,
well, the other thing is
where is that line right there? I don't know.
The other thing is with your with physical copies, if it's one you really like, you want to keep it in good condition. So that's where the digital copy lets you read it and enjoy it without ruining it.
Right, and usually on the crowdfunding books that I will, be I'll purchase, be a patron or whatever you want to call it, a backer. I make sure that I get the physical and digital copy combo.
Yeah. Speaking of combos, I know back in the day when I used to go to the old comic book store before they all shut down, it seems.
The old comic book store was right there on 9th and Broadway. I remember.
But you used to go in, and I remember they would have several issues bundled together in that shrink wrap, and it was sort of a crapshoot of, at least one on the cover caught your attention, and you didn't know what was in the middle. It's probably trash nobody wanted.
Oh yeah, the bargain bundles. I remember those.
Do you ever do that with Apogee Comics, where you like
I do at conventions
for a discount?
I mean, I don't have a whole lot of issues out there, but I got a good 6 that I put into yet. I'm doing my best. I need a clone. I need like 2 clones. So one can go to my day job because I don't want to go there, and I can just sit at home and draw comic books all day, and then give it to the other Nick, because I'm trained in penciling, inking, color. I still hire out for because I'm decent. I can kind of hold my own, but there's colorists out there that just really make the artwork pop and makes it completely stand out. Like this cover here, DC Alonso. He's worked for just about everybody that hires colorists, all the way from Disney, Pixar to Image, DC, and which is funny because he's DC Alonso and he's worked for DC and Marvel. So he's put a lot of work in there. So if there's something I want to catch your eye, I will give it to him because he knows that color palette. He knows how to invoke emotion and bring that out in the artwork. My job is to draw the dang thing, and make it look cool, really fancy poses, So the colorist would be really good. But I'd give it to the other Nick who's going to ink it, and then we'll just send it to DC after that. so I need a clone of DC also.
Yeah. So we've talked to other authors that actually write superhero books. We talked to, for instance, Jeff Haskell and Cece Akeke. A phenomenal gentleman, and Haskell is a former Army guy. Worked with the Bat Boys, although he wasn't Ranger, he tells me. And so I know tanker? No, he was commo for the Ranger Battalion.
Oh, okay. Haskins, right?
Yeah, Haskell.
Yeah, Haskell.
Yeah, he's a good guy. But I know that there's a thriving group of people that read superhero fiction, like is in books. I was almost said proper books, but that sounds demeaning, and I didn't mean it that way. But
comic books have been disposable. Well, they were disposable entertainment for years since their inception, and they still kind of are. People read them and throw them away.
But is there any plans of taking your universes, any of the mini ones that you have at the Apogee sort of wheelhouse, and writing like novel style stories in those worlds?
Yes, actually. There's a few characters that I think would do really well in a novel format.
Right.
Not graphic novel, but straight up novel. Let the imagination run wild. Solarin Prime's one of those because of just the nature of that character. I mean, he is a cosmic force. He travels the cosmos. He has the ability to do that, to go to distant worlds, to, I'm going to rip off Star Trek, meet strange new people, you know, go where no man has gone before, that kind of stuff, you know. So I think as long as the descriptions are good, the reader can just have a ball with it, you know.
One thing I think that CC Akeke and Charles and Haskell did was their covers definitely look like comic books. I showed you some of them. Like it definitely looks at it and you know exactly what kind of story you're getting.
Yeah, you know exactly what you're getting into.
And I could see, I mean, the layout is a little off as far as a novel goes, because you would need like to count for the spine and purely from a layout perspective. But the image, I could see that's not even on a novel cover.
This isn't even the full image that I drew. You know,
right? But you see what I mean, like
with,
the way you space it. Like, and I'm not an expert at that. I hire that out, but I know that certain formats you got to maneuver things to fit all the typography on there. But I mean, that image would pop on a book too. That's why.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've done some book covers because they specifically wanted a comic book style, just because the Outlast series that's done by Shane Laster. It's about a quasi zombie apocalypse that happens during a Comic-Con in San Antonio.
Oh, that's awesome!
It's so awesome, and I just sent the final cover for him, and I did the previous cover, and don't tell him, but it wasn't my best work. I look back at it now and I kind of cringe. I wish I could redo it, but yeah, the spine and having to, like, it was a lot of conversation. The wraparounds for, like, he wanted a back, spine, front cover image that blended into itself. And I was like, okay, well, he wants a completely different image on the back. It was like this bus driving away with like a horde of these quasi zombies, because they're not undead. You know, they're more like 28 days later.
Okay.
Like rabid virus. Or,
right.
I forgot what they called them.
Bath salt
but
people.
The rage virus zombies. So he was like, don't make them look undead. Don't make them look undead. And I'm like, oh, well, how can I do that? So I watched like 28 days later, 28 weeks later, you know, to kind of see how they looked. And I noticed that they would have this darkened blood in their veins.
Right.
So you get really fit people that are like really vascular, you know, and they would have like this discoloration, this darkness in their veins. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna roll with that, you know, and then I'll give them like really kind of like blackened raccoon eyes, and then of course give them the crazy red and yellow, you know, irises and pupils and whatnot. So, and it was cool, you know, so it was real easy when I handed it off to the cutter. So I'm like, okay, this is how it is. Think 28 days later, they're not undead, so don't give them any green or anything like that. You know, they're not deteriorating. They're very much alive. So
cool.
And so it's fun. Designing book covers is actually, it's a fun challenge.
And so, because I am leading my some friends in my first ever time as a DM for a Swords and Wizardry campaign, I have been frequenting boards for you know, RPG type stuff, and I know there's a thriving community of. Yes, there are. There's a thriving community of people who like Supers, the game that our friend Walt Robillard.
Oh my God, I love Supers.
His company owns. Is there any plans to make this a sort of almost an expansion pack of that rule set where you've got your characters so someone could play them?
I don't know. I don't. Hopefully, I haven't disappointed Grandpa Walt so much where he'll still take my calls. But there was plans to early on when I created Apogee. I didn't want it to stop at comic books.
That's the dream for every creator, right? You want to get all the things: the merch, the movie, the books, the comics.
Well, and it, like, I didn't get into this to make money, because I remember a very famous line from Jack Kirby. He said, "Comics will break your heart, kid." And I was like, you know, and it just stuck with me. And I've had a lot of heartbreak in this business. It can't just be the comic books. The comic books are important. It's the source material, but it needs to expand.
That makes you money.
Yeah, and I would love to make money at doing this, to be a full-time job where I don't have to risk my life every day. You know, I'd rather risk carpal tunnel than getting shot. You know, so
getting shot sucks.
Yeah, it's happened to me a few times, and I don't like it. I do not recommend it. 0 out of 5 stars every time.
Absolutely. I was just thinking, Walt told me once, speaking of RPGs and comics, and he said the way to make a little bit of money at RPGs or comics is to start with a lot of money.
yeah, and I haven't hit the lotto yet, but I keep playing. Yeah. Maybe it'll fall in. But it was never meant to end. The comics weren't to be the is all be all. It was always meant to expand into other mediums and different ways for other people to enjoy it. Because I would really like, one of my favorite things is getting fan fiction.
Yeah.
About some of my characters, and they take them into places that maybe I thought about and didn't explore, or maybe I never thought of it altogether, and unfortunately I can't use it because, it's unsolicited material. So
was any of it good?
Some of it was writing. Some of it was, one of them brought a tear to my eye.
So why not reach out and say, hey, I really like this fanfic. Why don't we talk about you writing a novel in this universe?
Some of those are probably going to be in the works in the future. I'm still in contact with some of them. So
Cool.
there's a lot of opportunities there, but I would love to see it in the supers. I've given Walt, I'm like, anytime you want to put them in the supers universe, you have my permission, whatever contracts I need to sign or duration, whatever, just let me know.
So I've looked at the system. It almost would seem like you could just get a simple expansion pack that has the stats for your characters and a little bit about the world. And then the rule set is sort of it's a supplement to the rule set, it would seem. Look at me sound like I know what the hell I'm talking about, because I don't. Trust me, I'm new. But it seems like it would be easy to attach it, because the Supers rule set is already almost like custom made for superheroes, hence the name.
And it really is. And I've done a lot of games with Walt on the BAMF podcast back in the day, using the Supers model. And I have this Supers villains handbook around here somewhere in this mess of my office. But no, it's a fun game, and it's completely open to throwing in like an indie comic expansion pack.
Yeah.
And all it does is throw the characters in. I've done a few trading cards where it has their power sets.
Right.
And it has like, okay, their intelligence, aura, things like that. That all could be interchanged and reevaluated and changed based on the Supers model or any RPG model that wanted to do it, really. Like I said, like, it doesn't end with the comics. I want it to expand into other things. The end goal is to sit in a movie theater and watch it opening night.
So say we all. So speaking of expanding into other things, I guess this is where we say, all right, I'm going to let you listen to that episode we recorded back in October. So so you can hear what we're talking about, because that was good stuff. I kept it around. Normally when we have episodes like that stuff doesn't work out, I just delete them because it's space on my hard drive. This was good enough. I'm like, nope, we're keeping it until we get that Solarin Prime out live. So all right.
And you were busting my chops about it since, hey,
it was fun. My interview was fun. Yeah, it was fun.
No, I can't wait for everybody to see it. I hope you enjoyed it.
All right, so you'll be listening to this on Friday, people. So enjoy your weekend. All right,
have a great weekend.
And we're live. Welcome back. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. So without further ado, we're going to reintroduce you to the co-host, the one, the only, the legendary Ranger, Nick Garber. It's been a while since you were on the show because that old day job. So we thought we'd have you back, and you could talk about your work for a change as a creator yourself. We haven't found as many comic book artists as we would like.
I know. It's crazy because of the circles I run with in the comic book world, in the indie comic book world, everyone's like, hey, man, I got this project coming out. Who has a podcast? So I'll message them, and they're like, just crickets.
Yeah, we've had that trouble lately. Everyone's gotten, I guess, podcast fatigue or something, because we've had a lot of people like stand us up for episodes and not show up. And it's like, we're pimping your stuff, yo. It's fun. Nerd out over what your passions. But if they don't want to be here, we don't want them here.
Exactly. If it yields like an extra 2 or 3 sales, for me, that'd be worth it, because every sale on the Kickstarter or crowdfunding, world counts.
Absolutely.
So, because it all
absolutely. Unfortunately, Cisca couldn't be here, ladies and gentlemen of the viewing and listening audience. She is still recovering from that ye old Dragon Con. She tells us she sounds like Hannah Montana, but I don't know who that is. So we're just going to go with it.
She does. She has that Miley Cyrus, Hannah Montana voice right now.
Okay. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We'll let you tell us in the comment section below, dear listener. But Nick, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. My name is Nick Garber. I'm the CEO and CFO of Apogee Comics. We're an independent comic book publisher. We're originated out of Texas. Now we're located in San Diego, California, where I live. So pretty much the company goes where I go. I'm a Army veteran, deployed a few times, and I like nerdy stuff. So
we actually figured out offline, one of the many times pre or post show, I don't remember, that his convoy or his marksmanship team, shall we say, was providing Overwatch for one of the missions I ran. So one of the times we called fire support, it would have been him or his buddies.
Yeah.
Because it was that sector at the right time. So that's kind of cool. It's a small world.
Yeah, it is. Well, it was a small battlefield too. So
yeah. So and then the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we found them. So I actually was introduced to Nick from Walt Robillard. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, but he doesn't care, so I don't care. We were looking for a new co-host when we were starting this back up. Was a year ago, I guess, at this point, back in February.
Yeah, we started talking.
Yeah, right around February.
Over a year ago. I don't know. At least
it might have been December. It could have been, but yeah, we were starting up everything, and we were waiting for the art, and so Walt put us in charge, in touch with him, and we thought, we've got, the veteran angle with you, obviously, but the comic book added a new dimension of things we could talk about. So sort of been a nice pairing, and if it weren't for that day job, we would have done a lot more episodes. And him and I are going to do, Nick and I, for you listening, we're going to start doing some review episodes of. Was it Love, Death, and Monkey Robots or whatever for some short episodes?
Cisca wanted us to watch.
Yeah, we're going to do some review episodes. We thought about, Nick and I talked about that, and since he's into comics, obviously, and he's drawing because he's an artist, we thought maybe we could call it Art House Reviews, and he could draw and you could watch what he's drawing while we talk about nerdy topics. And so he's got to figure out how to get his camera situated for that, and then we're going to start rocking and rolling.
That's already ready to go. If you've seen my live feeds on YouTube, I got a camera over the desk. I got a camera facing me, and then I run a camera because I have Mr. Stabby Stab in here with me usually when I'm doing it. So there's like 3 cameras going on StreamYard at the same time, and I just the main one I have focused on the drawing table.
Outstanding. So we will have to set that up. It's just at this point a matter of the logistics are there. We just got to get him time off of work. And time zones are a thing because he's Pacific time and East Coast time means it's 8 for him, means it's 11 for me. So
yeah, it wasn't a big deal when I was living in Texas. I was only an hour behind you guys.
Yeah. So now we've got to ask you the important religion questions, and we tailor these just for you. Judge Dredd, Guardians of the Galaxy, or the Green Lantern?
I'm going to have to go Green Lantern.
Good answer. I liked all of them, but the magic ring that can do all things was kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. And it's through sheer will, to create your constructs. It's probably one of the cooler powers out there.
I've seen some of the Green Lantern cartoons. I've read a few of the comic books, actually, and I watched the movie. So on a scale of 0 to heresy, what did you think of the movie?
It wasn't bad. It could have been better. I think I overhyped it for myself, and really I'm not used to that Hal Jordan being, I guess Hal Jordan back in the day before Parallax and that whole storyline, he was real quippy, he was a jokester. So I know they were doing the origin story of Hal Jordan, so that made sense to have Ryan Reynolds in there. But Ryan Reynolds was born to play only one comic book character, and that's Deadpool. So,
not that you're biased or anything.
Not that I'm biased, but when he became the Merc with the mouth and started breaking the fourth wall and all that in the comic books, I was like, there's only one dude that can play this guy.
Okay.
And it was Ryan Reynolds, but Ryan Reynolds was in a lot of comic book movies. He was, the hell was his name? I don't know. He was in Blade Trinity, and then he did Green Lantern. I don't know. I think I expect a little bit more out of it. I expected more out of the villain. I don't know. It was all right. I'm looking forward to the reboot that DC's getting ready to do. So we'll see. It'll probably get better. I hope.
Okay. I think now that we're seeing what streaming can do with the episodic nature, where you can instead of just limited by 2-hour window, you're getting a lot better quality, and then you go back from that where the storytelling is more in depth. Even if it's just a miniseries, and then you go backwards to a movie again, and you can definitely see the limitations it places on storytelling.
Oh, yeah. It's probably why one of my favorite superhero shows right now is the Titans on HBO Max, because it's the Teen Titans. For those of you that are familiar with the comics, but they made it more adult, so it's definitely not something you want to watch with your kids if they're little, because there's a lot of swearing, there's a lot of violence, there's gore, but it sets these characters in a very realistic real world, where a lot of people complain about, like, oh, well, they have to swear all the time, and I'm like, yeah, well, if you were, a former Robin, you were raised by, Bruce Wayne, Batman, a guy with a scarred psyche who's just emotionally damaged all the time. Yeah, you're probably gonna use some curt language.
Okay, and because we're polytheistic, Beowulf, Excalibur, or Krull?
Excalibur.
Excellent choice. I liked all of the 6 that we listed, so there was no wrong answer here, because
no, they're all good. It's just trying to. It's like Excalibur was definitely one of my favorite movies growing up.
I would tie Beowulf and Excalibur and then put Krull as second, because I've read some of the lore and the origin stories in the original Beowulf, so English lit degree, But yeah, so I like those a little bit more than Krull, but Krull was good for a campy show.
Yeah,
it's product of its times.
It's fun.
Although they probably depleted the ozone in filming it with all the hairspray they would have been using back then.
Oh, all the Aquanet? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And so because you're a comic book nerd at heart, Thor, Captain America, or Superman?
Cap.
Because he was Army. I dig it.
Well, yeah, and he's like what he's what every soldier strives to be, that perfect soldier, not just, physically, but like his morality, his integrity, it's like that every soldier, at least that's what I think. That's the type of guy you're striving to be, is be like Captain America.
Okay. So do you think superheroes in general fall into the space of science fiction, fantasy, or somewhere in between?
They fall in both. It depends on the comic book. I would say, Thor falls under fantasy, but it can also fall under sci-fi. Captain America, that's mill sci-fi. It all depends. I don't think it's one of those genres, one of those mediums that you can't just put it in like its own little box, like, because it just reaches out throughout all these different types of genres.
Yeah, it confused the hell out of Google when I typed it in. I put sci-fi superhero movie and then fantasy superhero movie. I did 2 side-by-side searches and it was all the same movies.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because it just transcends into each genre. So, and that's probably one of the reasons why I love comic books so much, is because you can get a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see, if you set it in ancient times where a fantasy could be more distinct, or you could set it in the future and make it very obviously one or the other. But generally speaking, superheroes tend to exist in modern time where there's overlap of both.
Or if their origin stories will be somewhere in like the 40s, somewhere around the beginning of the atomic age is where a lot of comic books, like if they want to have that long history, that golden age type backstory to them. It's usually right around, the time that we dropped the bomb,
Yeah. All right. So top 5 superheroes. We're going to put you on the spot.
Ooh, top 5 superheroes. Number 1, Daredevil. Do they have to be heroes or villains, or both? Can it be either
we could split them up if you want, and you could do your top 5 superheroes, top 5 villains.
Okay. So Daredevil, Moon Knight, Batman. These are in no particular order except for Daredevil. Daredevil's always number 1. Batman, Ghost Rider, and The Flash.
Okay, and villains.
Ooh, Dr. Doom, Taskmaster, Scarecrow from Batman. Let's see here. Some other good ones out there. Why am I drawing a blank on this? And then we'll just go with, who else we got? Red Skull. Can't believe I almost forgot Red Skull. And Typhoid Mary.
Who is Typhoid Mary?
She's a villain in Daredevil.
Okay. Learn something new every day.
Yeah.
All right. Where do you rank Doc Ock in all of that?
Doc Ock is definitely in the top 10.
Okay.
for villains. Yeah, he's in my top 10. Who doesn't love Doc Ock?
And the Green Goblin is a good one. He was good in the Marvel with that the blonde actor who played him. I'm drawing a blank. The Spider-Man one. You know what I'm talking about?
The Tobey Maguire one or the
Tobey Maguire one. That actor did it well.
Oh, Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
He was a solid Green Goblin.
Okay, so Team Marvel or DC?
Ooh, I don't know. Well, right now if I do pick up a mainstream book, it's usually from DC. Marvel's not to throw any shade, but the writing quality and the art quality from Marvel right now hasn't been all that great. DC's just been knocking it out of the park on both. So
one day they're going to get up there with the pinnacle of the top of the comic book industry. Do you know who they'd have to beat for that?
Who? DC?
Yeah, you know who DC has to beat number one?
Me? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Apogee Comics.
No, they outsell me, but because they're a major corporation.
It's quality, not quantity, my friend.
It is, and hopefully the my loyal fans, all two of them.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. Yeah, it's been like 2 years since I've put a book out, so.
But you're going to change that now. I've seen momentum from you.
2022 is going to be an interesting year, not only for me but also for the fans. I'm doing all the prep work right now, so January 1, I'm hitting the ground running. The goal is to try and do a page a day, at least with the pencils. And if you work the math, if I do that for a year, that's almost 16 and a half issues that I can complete within a year, at least getting the pencils done. So
nice.
I'm going to split it up amongst different titles within the Apogee Comics universe.
So you don't get stagnant.
Yeah.
So we've got to get back on track because we nerded out a little bit, and Doc's going to get pissy if we don't.
Oh, yeah.
So we here at the Blasters and Blades love both the fantastical and the scientific. So what was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
I would have to say sci-fi. Star Wars had a huge impact on me. I know a lot of people that we've interviewed on the show say that, and they're not wrong. First time I saw a little farm boy, on Tatooine pick up a lightsaber and go, wreck and shop on the Empire, I was hooked. But I have a love for fantasy as well.
Yeah. I remember my first fantasy. I actually read fantasy before I found sci-fi. Well, I don't know. Orson Scott Card sometimes blends a little bit of both. So I don't know if he's space fantasy or fantasy sci-fi because they kind of overlap. But he did some good stuff. I know he's not as popular these days, but
my introduction to fantasy was The Beastmaster. So I was like, man, this movie's this is just awesome.
Oh yeah. I like that one.
That ferrets, I watch it now and it just doesn't hold up. But when I was a little kid watching that,
first fantasy movie I remember was Willow.
Yeah, that was already after I had. Like my love of comics, especially like superhero movies. I remember being 4 years old. My parents went to go watch like 10,000 BC or something like that at the drive-in. And
it's a good movie.
I was in the back.
It's not that old though.
No, the one maybe it was a million BC. I don't know. It's whatever the Raquel Welch in like the 70s and shit, late 70s. So they're watching this movie at the drive-in, and the screen behind me was playing Superman. Christopher Reeves. So they were watching their thing, and I'm just like hanging out looking through the back, the rear window. My mom's like old ass Chrysler, and watching Superman with no sound. But I was just like, oh, this is awesome.
So I Googled it real quick. When you said Raquel Welch, it was 1 million BC, but I think I'm thinking of the 10,000 BC, the one where the caveman or they're hunting the saber tooth in the beginning and they end up going to the pyramids.
Yeah, that's one.
Oh.
There's so many movies out there that have BC and then have some just random times like, oh, is it 1 million BC? Is it 10,000 BC? I don't know. But yeah,
so
that's right.
So what was your first the first place that you discovered speculative fiction? Was it Star Wars? Was it something before that on the television, a comic book? Where do you
really, I think my first discovery, because my parents, I was too young to remember, like it was the old George Reeves Superman TV show.
Oh, I remember.
It was in black and white, and then I remember like later on, like the show had been off the air forever by the time I got around to it. But I just remember being little and watching that. And this guy's breaking through walls and he's flying around, So I would take, I do what every kid did when he discovered Superman. Tie a little blanket or a towel, around your neck, run around. My parents said I would run around, jump off the couch, run full speed into a wall, yelling "Mucka Man" because I couldn't say Superman because I was little. So that's what I was doing. So I guess that I got hooked into comic books real early on. Like I was like that impressionable age where if you want to hook them on something, that was it. So luckily it wasn't anything other than that, because I don't know where my life would be if I didn't, have that interest, because it's kind of shaped everything I've done over the years. So
yeah,
I could just be an accountant, not, no offense to accountants, but I'm just like, I couldn't see myself doing that.
Yeah. So the other part of this is when you do enough of these, you realize every time, because your memories are kind of vague and you discover so much at once when you're that age, that we could ask you this question tomorrow and you could be like, no, I definitely remember reading David Eddings and, whatever, or Shannara, or, like there's so much out there to love that it's sometimes hard to pinpoint.
A Frank Franzetta, Conan cover,
Oh, that was some good art. I don't know if you could get away with making that art these days.
Nah, probably not. I mean, I think
the world is a little too, yeah, the world has changed.
It has changed, not necessarily for the better. No polio's good, but internet.
Yeah, polio is a bitch, but there's other things that were a little bit not so good nowadays. But we don't want to dwell. So, what is it you love about speculative fiction, the genre?
Because I have an answer in my head, and now I'm like drawing a blank. What I really enjoy about it is that it can be anything you want, and it's as long as your goal should always be escapism for the reader. To go inside these worlds that you're never going to see, with your own eyes. Going to Narnia, going to Mordor, going to Asgard, those kinds of things. So what I really enjoy about that is that you can just open it up and be transported to another world and feel like you're a part of it, And if you start with something like from the ground floor, then you grow with the series also, and you just feel like you have, something vested, and especially if their characters are interesting. That's what I really love about it, is that they're so over the top as far as characterization. These are fantastical people doing fantastical things, and next thing you know, you've read 320 pages and it's like 2:00 in the morning. You're like, oh crap, I should probably go to sleep. I love how it just kind of pulls you in and makes you feel part of the story.
And it's even cooler when you find stories like that when you're young and you grow up with the characters.
Well, I mean, like Daredevil. Daredevil really captured me because he's blind, and I had never seen a blind superhero before. Never read about it, never even heard about it. Until I picked up Daredevil, and then come to find out that he was a devout Catholic. So interesting story, really cool superpower. My religion was represented, and I've never really seen that because it's not something really comic books really dive into. I mean, they'll use like the devil or Mephisto or things like that. They'll use like Judeo-Christian, characters and themes, but like specifically Catholicism. And I was like, oh, man, that's awesome. Because I felt like I related more to the character that way because he had a lot of the, what we call Catholic guilt. So I was like, this guy suffers like I suffer.
Yep. So how did your love of speculative fiction transition into you writing stories in it via the form of art? Because obviously comics tell a story too.
Yeah, it's sequential. It's a sequential narrative. And I think it's really, I think it's a little bit more difficult than, even though I'm doing it with pictures, I think it's difficult doing it in a comic book as opposed to a novel, because you could go pages and pages of description and writing for a comic book, yeah, I can write a pretty good description about what's going on in these scenes, but it's all up to the artist to translate that. And then I have to do a lot in just limited captions and dialogue. I don't get pages of narrative. So
okay. So many authors let their own real life experience influence the kind of stories they tell. So were there any specific formidable moments for you that affect the kind of stories you like to tell?
I like to have some sort of military connection because the majority of my adult life was in the military. So everything in the Apogee universe has some sort of connection to the armed forces, either whether it's the main character or a supporting character.
Okay. So speaking of the military, obviously you mentioned that you served in the U.S. Army, in the Ranger battalions, and then doing other stuff. So how do you feel like your time in the Army affects the kind of stories you tell, other than just having military characters?
Well, besides that, it gives you drive and focus and time management.
Okay.
That's one of the things I took away from the military was being able to do the most I can with as little time as possible. So, because the military, it's like, hey man, we got this mission. Here's your op order. You guys are rolling out in 6 hours. Get working. And so you had to do a lot with very little amount of time or prep time. So you get really good at time management. So I'm able to schedule like, okay, from this time to this time. It makes it easier to plan my day too, and how I'm going to pump stuff out as far as like artwork.
Okay, that makes sense. So do you ever draw on people you knew in the military?
Oh yeah.
Change their names, or is it more blatant?
I slightly change them. For those that read Phantomhop, there's 2 detectives in there, Downs and Gonzo. Those are both people I served with and deployed with. Downs was after my buddy Fane, Andrew Fane, who we called Drew, and he always called himself Drew Downs. Like, he just called me Drew Downs. It was like it was his email. It was like Drew Downs and the year he was born at like Hotmail and shit. So I was like, that's pretty good. I'm gonna hold on to that one. And then Gonzo was our readiness NCO. So he was an admin guy, but he's like 6'3", 4, kind of looks like The Rock now. He owns a gym. He's just like yoked out of his mind. So he ended up being Gonzo, because that's what we called him. His last name was Gonzalez. Hey, Gonzo, man. Hey, man. Fuck, my paperwork screwed up, or I didn't get paid this, on the 15th. Oh, man, let me check in on that. So I threw him in the book because it's easier to use people to create characters than trying to just come up with somebody from scratch. Just kind of create a person out of thin air. It's really difficult. At least I found it difficult. But if I'm like, hey man, I need someone that's kind of a skeptic, he's serious and he's kind of grumpy, he's kind of jaded, and then I have Downs, who's this like upbeat comic book nerd cop. He's just kind of like explaining, like, hey man, don't you read comic books? Because there's rules to this stuff, man. And Gonzo's just like, dude, shut up. Why am I partnering with this guy?
So have they stuck around and read the comics you made of them, or?
Oh yeah. I told them what I was doing when I was doing it, and they're like, "Oh man, that's badass, dude! I'm so honored. You guys sent me a copy." And when I did, both of them like, "Dude, you nailed me. You got me dead to rights, bro. Like that was perfect. Like if I was in that situation, I would have done exactly what you wrote." And Drew, and I was like, yeah, that's what I was trying to do, man. So the most important thing is that they didn't get offended, and they really enjoy it. And they're like, hey man, I need a pin up with this guy.
So it's really hard to offend military people.
Oh, it is, man, because we're so thick-skinned. It's like when we insult each other, and we'll do it just out of fun because we're bored at the motor pool on Monday. Just start ripping into each other, and then every so often somebody hits you with something, just you're like, I should be offended. I should be upset. I should be beating your ass. But that was really good. So I'm going to let it slide.
Or the good ones where you're like, shit, when they're not looking, I'm going to grab my leader book and scribble that in there real quick so I can repurpose that.
I'm going to take notes. I'm going to use it for some other guy when a situation, presents itself. Absolutely.
I was always appreciative of people like that who could think on their feet. Like if you give me enough time, I could plan something. But the people that could do it on the fly, like I was always impressed.
That I was usually that guy, very quick witted. Someone would say something, I'd have some sniper round coming at you from the bushes, and you're just like.
I was the guy that. Have you seen that episode where Data starts laughing and he tells them, "Oh, it's because of this joke," and they're like, "We told you that joke 5 years ago."
Yeah,
like that's me.
Was that an insurrection?
I don't remember. I just remember the bit with Data finally laughing.
Yeah, he got the
implant chip. Yeah,
yeah. I think that was insurrection. Or
that was always me. It took me forever to come up with the reply. I could come up with a perfect zinger, but it was 3 days later.
It's like I got a reply, but it was it would have been more handy 3 years ago.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about how you draw from people you knew and how that affects the stories you tell. So how does it affect the kind of stories you like to read?
Dude, I'm like every other type of bro vet out there, I guess. Not that I just say bro vet, but I'm not really a bro vet. Accuracy matters, nothing will like kill something. It'll kill the joy that I was having if it's like just over the top inaccurate, I do give a little leeway because it's like, so what if they're wearing the wrong piece of kit for that time frame, or like the guy has his elbow up when it should be tucked in. There's some things I'll let slide just because I want to enjoy it, and not be that guy's like point out every inaccuracy, because I have friends and that do that, guys I served with, and we're watching a movie and it'd be like a military themed movie or based movie, and they're just, oh man, that's not accurate, because this is what we would have done. And I'm like, dude, nobody cares, man. Like, I paid my $5 just like everybody else. Shut up.
So the ones that always get me though is I do count the rounds
before they do a magazine exchange.
Yeah.
Have to change mags. But yeah, the type of stuff that I look forward to, as far as like entertainment and speculative fiction or movies, comic books, is does it grab me? Am I interested? The big thing is, do I give a shit if this character lives or dies and what happens to him or her?
Yeah.
I find that a lot especially in the indie comics. It's a cool idea. It's just the execution was a little bit off, and you just don't care about the character. I'm like, why do I care? Why is he going after this guy on top of a building with a clock ticking? Like you didn't get me to the point where I give a crap. And usually you have a couple of pages to do that. So
fair. So transitioning away from the writing side, let's talk about things from the fan angle. So we know we've asked you these questions the first interview, which was like episode 1 or 2, but we've got some new audiences since then, so we're going to ask this one again. But have you got any cool fan art or had anyone cosplay your characters yet?
I've gotten a lot of cool fan art. I wish I had some of it readily available right now. Everything from 8-year-old kids, which I don't know who's letting an 8-year-old read my stuff. Excuse me. But I've got a lot of cool fan art from fellow artists. I'm like, hey man, I love drawing your character. Is it cool if I draw them? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then they'll send me a copy. I'm like, man, that's pretty cool, man. You nailed it. No cosplays yet. I cosplayed myself, or not myself.
Totally counts.
I cosplayed one of my characters like in 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. Like I did CrossFit for 6 months just so I could get in shape enough to pull that off for Halloween. And then after it was done, I was like, all right, cool, back to cheeseburgers.
Yeah, I can feel that one. I'm working on going the other direction finally, but I definitely could appreciate a good cheeseburger. So has anyone asked for your autograph?
At conventions, yeah.
Totally counts at this point because no one's talking to anybody out in public anymore.
Hey, I sell one comic book. I feel like John Grisham, so.
So have you spotted anybody reading those comic books out in public?
When I was selling them in Sacramento, like the local comic book store, there was like Empire Comics Vault. I went in there one day because it's my LCS, so I would go there to pick up whatever books I was interested in getting, and they had me on the indie creators rack, because he had like a stack of 5. I think I had like 2 books out at the time. It was like I was just starting out, and he had like a reading area, almost like a library, like chairs and stuff. So you could read the comic book, and there was this 13, 14-year-old kid, and he was sitting on the comfy chair, and I look over, and yeah, it was an issue of Phantomhop, and I was like, oh man, that's pretty cool. What do you think of the book? He's like, man,
it's okay.
It's okay. I like it. Hopefully the art gets better. And I was like, ooh, because I did everything on that book, and the first couple of issues, I did the art, and I was still learning how to do sequential art instead of just like pinups and posters, because it's totally different. There's nuances to it that I wasn't familiar with. I've learned over the last 10 years putting those books together. So, but having that kid who's like, the art could be better. He's like, I like the story, but the art could be better. I was like, okay, well, I know what I got to do when I get home besides cry.
After you down the bourbon to make it through the night.
I go through all the stages of grief. I'm like, kid don't know what he's talking about. No, he was absolutely look at those earlier issues. I'm like, oof, I need to redraw this.
Pretty soon he's got his little hit list, but he's got the lipstick drawing circles around.
Playing some like weird 70s like disco music.
Yeah, I got a montage going. So what's the weirdest or funniest interaction you've had with a fan since you started
I haven't
writing?
really had any weird fan interactions, but before I moved out to San Diego, I was living in Texas. So I was flying out to San Diego to find a place to live. I'm sitting at a layover at the Houston airport, and I was like, man, it was like 5 hours. I had like this ridiculously long layover. So, all right, well, I'm going to get some food. So I go to this place, I think it was called Big Daddy's. It was a burger joint inside the airport, and I had a bar. So I was like, all right, cool. That's how I'm going to waste some of my time. So I went over there, and the only seating they had available was like this long table, almost like a bar. So they're like, hey, do you mind sitting here? It's kind of family style. Everyone's kind of sitting together. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. If that's what you got, it's what you got. So I sit down. I get myself an old fashioned, about 2 old fashions deep. I had this young couple sitting next to me. And I rolled up my sleeve. There we go. So I got tattoos of my characters on my body. So I have Bengali right here on the inside of my forearm. And I was checking my phone and enjoying my drink. And the guy leans over and he's like, hey, are you a fan of Bengali? That's Bengali, right? And I'm like, yeah. Because I didn't have this one yet. I didn't have the cardinal tattooed on my forearm yet. So I just Bengali on my forearm. I'm like, yeah, you can say I'm a fan. He's like, oh, man, I backed that Kickstarter like a year ago. It's so cool. It's like just 90s comic book fun. It's the stuff that I wish, modern comics were doing. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. And he's like, so I take it you're a fan. He's like, yeah, I'm a big fan. I can't wait till the next issue comes out. I'm like, all right, cool. He's like, so you got to be a super fan, man, because he's tattooed on your arm. I'm like, yeah, you can say that. He's like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, because I'm the creator. And his eyes got real big. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm the creator. And at that point, his girlfriend or fiance or whatever had stepped off to the bathroom during this conversation. So when she comes back, he's like, babe, you're not going to believe this. That Kickstarter that I backed, Bengali? She's like, yeah, the demon looking dude. He's like, yeah, that's it. Like, dude, this is the creator. This is the guy. She's like, oh man, that's cool. So we had a couple of drinks, and they went to their flat and I went to mine. But it was a really cool experience. I never thought that was ever going to happen to me as like such a, at a young point in my comic book career. So
nice. That's cool. So this is the part where we talk about Nick Garber and everything he has created. So Reader's Digest of your body of work. What have you drawn? What have you created?
I try to throw in some artwork in every book that leaves, Apogee's doors to the public, whether it's the cover or the interior art. What things that I have personally drawn for Apogee is the Crimson Guardians, the Cardinal. I did the cover. I did the interior art. I did the cover for the Phantomhop. Well, it's not really. It was like a soft reboot when we started Apogee. I wanted to start a new story as I was trying to finish up the old one, which is going to be released later. It's going to be called Phantomhop Declassified. So that'll be like a little origin story. But what we did with that book is we hint towards the previous volume, the previous series, and so you could just jump right into it and not have to worry about. I used to hate that as a kid, reading a comic book. Pick one up on the spinner rack, and it's like, you're kind of confused, but there's a little caption at the bottom that says, hey, if you want to know more about this, you need to check out like this other comic book, and they would give you the issue number. So Phantomhop, Crimson Guardians, which is we changed the name to Crimson Paladin. So when the next issues come out, that'll all be rebranded. We have Corvid and Sparrow getting ready to come out next year. The Last Pendragon, and the one that's going to be coming out later this month, either late September, I'll be doing a Kickstarter for it, or early October, is Solarin Prime. And
wait a minute, back up. You said the Last Pendragon, King Arthur?
Yeah. The
Nice.
last descendant of Arthur Pendragon, yeah.
Nice. So I actually wrote a short story for the After, which is an RPG world that Walt knows the creator of. I can't remember the name, John something.
Okay.
And the RPG came out, but the anthology fell through. So I actually wrote about Pendragon brothers surviving the apocalypse and the alien invasion and coming back.
Yeah, I was a huge fan. Like I said, I loved the movie Excalibur, and I was a big fan of the Arthurian legend. So you'll have to have me on when that book finally comes out. We can talk about that one. But it's a fun character. He's like my Superman of the Apogee universe. So
now we're going to have to constantly adding to topics we can do fireside chats about. King Arthur could be a fun one.
Oh yeah, I was a big Percival fan.
Yeah, I think Gwen gets a bad rap. I mean, just because he slept with her, it could happen.
Yeah, I mean,
he was Jody before Jody was Jody. That's all I'm saying.
Jody's gonna Jody, bro. Arthur was off looking for the Holy Grail. I mean, of course, she got. What
else are you gonna do? It gets cold in those castles. They're a bit drafty.
Yeah.
So, well, all of that obviously sounds fascinating. We'll have you back, sprinkle it out throughout the run of this podcast. We want to talk about your other ones, and then we can see if you give different answers to your origin story questions.
I know, right?
But you did mention Solarian Prime has the Kickstarter coming up soon. So when's that coming out? The Kickstarter?
It'll be later on this month, like towards the last week of September, which I'm running out of time. So
okay. So where did you get? Go ahead.
As far as like putting it together, I got to put the video together. I have 5 pages actually colored. The book is completely drawn. So if you guys are wondering where the money's going to go to, it's going to be to color the rest of the book and get it lettered and packaged and ready to go. So
we will, when we release this, if the Kickstarter isn't live, when we release this, we'll pop back to this episode and we will add the Kickstarter link to the show notes whenever it goes live. Mm-hmm. And then we will probably share whatever video you do for your Kickstarter here as well. If you could do an audio only version, we'll share it both platforms so they know to back it. And that'll just be, you pimping the thing.
Yeah,
we've got this platform. Why not?
Might as well use the heck out of it. So,
but if you're going to do it, I do expect you to do the movie trailer voice as you read the sales pitch.
Voiceover. I've been looking at like how to utilize iMovie better on my Mac, because it is editing software. It's kind of canned stuff, but there's more you can do with it. There's like more advanced options. So I'm playing with that. I want to do a voiceover. And do it in movie theater voice.
In a world.
In a far-off world that is destroyed by overpopulation.
So we'll get back on Solarian Prime because that's what we had you on to talk about.
Yeah.
So where did you get the premise for this universe? How did you come up with this idea? Was it psychedelics, Ouija board, overindulging in expired Ranger candy?
A little bit of everything. And then I picked the wrong mushroom and I was transported to this far off world where obviously I was hallucinating. No. The idea came from I like Shazam. I like that character. I like that this boy, by saying one word, turns into this like perfect human. Can fly and go on adventures, things like that. So you have like this teenager's mind in a grown ass adult with superpowers. So that was kind of an inspiration of how I got this idea. I created him along with a lot of the other characters that I'm finally getting out the door when I was like 12, 13 years old. The original version for him, he used to be called Sunscreen. That was the original name was that it was going to be called Sunscreen. They're like, why would you name a hero that? I'm like, because there's a funny story behind it. And they're like, okay, what's the story? And I was like, okay, cool. So he gets his powers and he gets shot off into space. You know, and obviously he goes through the atmosphere, so burns all his clothes off, and he like lands in like, you know, some beach in Florida, naked as a jaybird, coming out of the water and coming on the beach where there's all these vacationers, and just some like stoner, you know, surfer dudes like, bro, sunscreen, you know, and he was kind of discombobulated, so he thought that was his name. That was good. That was what he was originally going to be called, but as I got older and more mature and started naming characters after you know, some sort of, you know, goofy gag, I started developing it further, and I came up with Solarin Prime. I know I wanted a space hero because I had my Batman archetype, I had my Superman archetype, I needed a Green Lantern type. So I wanted something that I could. It doesn't always have to hang around on Earth. You know, I could take it to the cosmos if I needed to, and probably that's where the majority of the story is going to be, is out in space.
So, do you have any plans to novelize your universes and characters and such?
Oh, I would love to see that, like a novelization, like outside of a graphic novel. Someone who's a lot more gifted at writing in the novel format than I am. Because I had zero experience in that. I had to learn how to be a writer because writers are expensive when I started this. So I had to learn to become a writer, but I don't think I'm willing to learn how to be, you know, writing novels.
Okay.
Fair enough. It'd be really cool. It'd be really cool to see, and I'd probably read the hell out of it.
What about like an RPG setting? I know Supers exist, which is superhero based, so it would probably be easy to graft your own comic heroes into that existing universe.
Yes, absolutely.
I've seen some real plays of the Supers, and it's got room from everything from campy to gritty. So
I created a character in the Supers format playing with Walt, and I liked that character so much that I was like, I'm putting him into my comic book universe. So it's I would love to see my characters in a role playing game, you know.
Well, I understand you know the creator, so it might be possible just to draw the characters, give the stats, and get it in a supplement. It's just kind of thing. I don't know what's involved in it.
Walt was create an RPG based on the RPG universe. So
yeah,
that I'm always open to that type of collaboration.
But that guy's always busy and never sleeps. So
yeah, he's busier than I am, and I'm pretty damn busy still.
All right, so before we dig in, can we see some of what the art for this Solarian Prime looks like? Can you share it?
Yeah, absolutely. There it is. Oh, wait, I got to hit share and share screen. And window, boom.
All right, add to stream. Now we can give it center. Man, that's nice.
Yeah, it's a good looking cover. It's done by Sean MacArthur. He was the original interior artist. Things just didn't work out. He got busy doing his own thing. So, and at the time I was on a timetable. So I hired Tony Pichana from Brazil to do the interior work. But the cover is all Sean.
Now, when you say interior work, are you talking about the drawing? Because I understand that. So, work with me. There's the line drawing, which is basically like a color, and then it's colored in like almost like a coloring book, but not quite that simplistic. And then that's the final product. So
yeah,
what part of it were you?
I created the guy, designed his suit.
So you draw the concept, and then they told the story from there.
Yeah. The writer was Trevor Bolin, and he wrote. We had a couple of meetings about kind of where I wanted the story to go. The premise, and he was a younger guy too when it was written. He was like 21, 22. So it was like real young. So when I mentioned that the premise for the book for this issue was Cool Hand Luke in space, he had no idea what I was talking about. He was like,
what we have here is a failure to communicate.
Exactly. So in this issue, yeah, it's essentially Cool Hand Luke in space. The majority of it is him not even in his suit. He's not even in his powers. He's a human in a alien supermax penitentiary. And the rest of Inhabited Worlds knows about Earth, but it's kind of like they don't look highly of us. It's like, you guys aren't even a light speed traveling or warp speed traveling civilization, so we don't even bother with you. They look at us weak and stupid. They look at us like cockroaches. They're like, we just let them hang around on their little blue planet, leave them alone. So when you have a human in there, I mean, he's just constantly getting just beat up and tossed around because they have an inhibitor chip on him that prevents him from using his powers. So,
okay, all right, that's some nice art though.
Yeah, it turned out really great.
So let's move on to the story itself. So what would your 30-second elevator pitch be? Would it just be Cool Hand Luke in space?
I don't know if you need much more than that, but no, the elevator pitch would be I guess the best way to put it is like a young man finding his way not only on Earth, but in the universe when he gets imbued with these cosmic powers. In space. Okay. Cool Hand Lucas. I really got to work on my elevator pitches. They suck.
All right. So what is it that makes Solarian Prime special?
I think it's the story, where we drop you off in it, because when the story starts out, he's already been Solarian Prime for a few years, like 5 years, because he got his powers at 16 when he got smacked with an alien consciousness from the planet Solaris. And that's what gives him his powers. And he's also sharing a consciousness with this other being that gave him his powers. So I think that's what really sets him apart, because it's hard to create a completely original character and story arc that hasn't been told before. So you got to do with what you got and make it as unique to you as possible. So the idea of this kid leaving Earth at 16 years old and getting a, for lack of a better term, a universal or worldly education by experiencing new planets, new cultures, new peoples, and new dangers. I think that's what sets it apart from a lot of books that are similar to that have that space theme. Or I think it's different than what you're going to see in the pages of Green Lantern. It's different than what you're going to see in like Nova and the Nova Corps from Marvel. It's a really in-depth story with a really elaborate backstory, and it's just interesting. I think that's what sets it apart, is just how it's set up and how it's portrayed.
So which tropes do you feel like you use the best in Solarian Prime, and do you actually put a lot of tropes in there? Are there some
not intentional? I mean, yeah, it's a coming of age story. It's like where do I fit in the universe, or where I fit in the world. So it's a lot of man versus man in there, or man versus self. I think that's probably the biggest trope, is like the coming of age trope. It's like he's a grown man, but like he got his powers at 16, and then he left everything he knew and his planet to go figure out where he fits in the grand scheme of things.
Okay. So do comic books tend to not have a lot of tropes like regular stories, or are they?
They do. You like Punisher is like the lone gunfighter. Comic books use tropes all the time.
Okay. So what subgenre or genres do you feel like this story fits the best into? Did you lean more to the fantasy, the sci-fi, somewhere in the middle with paranormal?
I think it's going to be, it touches a lot of them. It touches definitely the sci-fi in the first issue. Being out in space, being in an alien supermax, when we haven't even discovered life on other planets yet. But, Sam Truman over here, AKA the Solarin Prime, at a very young age is discovering all this stuff, and it's blowing his mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's going to be some paranormal later on, some almost religious, I guess, origins of the universe, threats from before the Big Bang, a lot of pissed off, like old gods, stuff like that. So we got a lot planned for it, not just Solarin Prime, but for the whole Hbo universe. But a lot of the giant Avenger-worthy type threats are going to come from this comic book.
Okay. So I'm not a comic book guy myself, but I know there are several styles of art that are kind of iconic for that space. So what style of art do you use for Solarian Prime?
I would say that it's a little John Romita Jr. Um, not a whole lot of cross hatching, which is like more towards like Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, those guys. It's a very clean art style. Um, the colorist does probably the majority of the work of giving it depth and tone. Um, yeah, that's the type of art. I would say it's more like John Romita Jr. Trying to think of some of the other artists out there that his it's kind of like Tony's really good. He's good at what he does, and he was cheap. Of course, hopefully he doesn't see this and starts charging me more. But
he was affordable, economical.
He was affordable. He was affordable, and he was fast. He was affordable, and he's fast, and he's good. I got some more pictures here. Bring that up.
Sure.
Lost my brain for a second. That happens. Here we go. Catalog.
So while you're pulling that up, can you tell us a little bit about the main character? You said
Sam Truman.
Sam Truman.
Yeah, Sam Truman is the dude. Actually, here's the picture of the villain. Let me bring that up. Item couldn't be found. It's right there. I don't know if you can bring that up or not. So let me bring this. Share screen.
So, what can you tell us about Sam Truman?
He was a artsy type kid, drama club, liked drawing, lived in his own world, kind of a skater, alternative type kid. He's a Air Force brat, so going into those connections with the, with the military, and his dad flew spacecraft for NASA, so he gets hit really hard when his dad gets lost on a shuttle mission. Presumed dead, fiery explosion, type thing. What caused the ship to crash was when these two alien consciousness, one of them being General Grexis here, and the other one being Proxys. Proxys was a princess of Solaris, and these people had developed a way for space travel without actually leaving their own planet. They would get in this apparatus and they would do something called the jump, where they would take their consciousness, attach it to a photon or a tachyon, and send it out into the cosmos. And then when they would reach an inhabited world, they would they would share the consciousness with the indigenous. So they would find a person that was very suitable to be a host for them, and take over their bodies a little bit. Definitely just kind of like along for the ride. But they had to ask for permission. So like you kind of go into this dream state when it hits you, and you have a conversation with whoever the traveler is, and you either agree or disagree to the terms of service, or terms of use, and then that's how they would explore, because they couldn't get past their own atmosphere with their own technology, but they were able to. They had realized that you could attach it to a certain light beam, photon, or tachyon, and that would pierce through their dense atmosphere and go travel the cosmos. And the way it's also written is that planet is known within the Aperture universe to be the first world with life after the Big Bang. So
nice.
So they are the oldest civilization in our known universe.
So were there any, well, first off, how did they pick Sam? Was it something about him, or they just luck of the draw?
He was there, right place, right time.
Or wrong place, right time.
Or wrong place, right time, So Proxys, who's the good alien consciousness that inhabits Sam, she was escaping because the Solaris was dying. General Grexis was, I don't want to give any spoilers, but he's the reason why that planet was on its way out. So he was in pursuit of her, and that just all that cosmic momentum that that photon had, that consciousness had, crashed right through Sam's dad's ship, and caused it to explode. So when it hit him, she explained everything like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this. This is not where I was trying to end up, and I didn't mean to cause you any pain or suffering. But what I can offer you is, a fantastical life." So he took it, and he was about 16 when that happened, and then she told him, like, "Well, we can't do it here. We have to go out into space. You have to, I have to show you how to use these powers I'm going to give you."
Okay. So what about secondary characters? Were there any secondary characters that are memorable in this universe?
There are later on, but in this first issue that's coming out, really it's the other aliens, mainly the alien prison guards, because they're all kind of, stereotypical, a-hole prison guards, So they like beat on them. They allow Sam to get beat on, and those are they're fun. They're interesting, and I'm sure I'm going to bring them back later on. The warden's kind of he's a dickhead, and we wanted him to be as unlikable as possible. So at the end of that story, when Sam gets his powers back, and it was payback time. It's just you're just like, you've been waiting so many pages for this guy to get his. So
okay,
I think I just spoiled it. I just spoiled the ending. Shit.
No, you didn't. You didn't. So other than the general, were there other bad guys for them to fight?
There's more coming out. One of my other characters, Bengali, he'll be someone that he's going to fight with. Not only the Bengali that we have on Earth, but we'll start doing through flashbacks over that 5-year gap while he was gone, of why he has issues with Bengali, because he's run into another Bengali out there in the cosmos, and most of those Bengalis are world corruptors, world destroyers. They just wreck shop on any planet that they happen to be on. So, and then there's definitely more species that are coming out. You're going to find that there's other survivors from planet Solaris, that have inhabited bodies, and those got their own unique abilities as well. We have a lot planned for this. It's going to be a big world that they're playing in, just that slice of the Apogee Comics universe, and that'll branch off into the other titles as well.
So will all of the stories put out by Apogee, they're all in the same universe?
Yeah, they all exist in the same universe.
All right. So Sam meets you in a back alley, and he finds out that you're the creator of this world. So you're the reason his dad died, and he got this crazy woman in his head and all the things. Can you take him in a back alley, or is he going to kick your ass?
Oh, wait, is he powered up, or does he have an inhibitor chip?
We'll say first with the inhibitor chip and then powered up.
Okay. Inhibitor chip. Yeah. It's going to be a good fisticuffs. He's going to get some good shots in. Without it, if he's powered up, he's going to vaporize me.
Okay. Fair enough.
Because I run my characters through the ringer, and Sam's no different. And what I feel kind of a dick about is because I did it to him at such an early age of his life. It's like 16 years old, he's like a sophomore, junior in high school, his future's wide open, and then boom, I throw this crushing responsibility on him and kill his dad.
Well, you could have gone full Disney and killed his mom too.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was getting real tired of the orphan trope, So,
no, that'd be your defense. Well, like, I didn't kill your mom.
Yeah, it's like, I didn't kill your mom. I left her alive. Gave her cancer.
There you go. So finally, what can you tell us about the universe? You mentioned that all of the Apogee comics are existing in the same universe.
Yes.
And obviously, in all the good stories, the universe where the action happens is as much a character as the protagonist and antagonist. So what can you tell us about this universe?
It's large and expansive, and I think about it every day of how I can, make it more interesting, expand it, villains, fantastical creatures, old gods. The giant bad guy antagonist for the Apogee universe, my Thanos, my dark side, is Zedegoth. Zedegoth is he existed before the Big Bang. Big Bang, before the creation of all life throughout the universe. And when the Big Bang happened, what in the comic we call it the first light, or the first. It sent him and his acolytes into deep space, like just deep space. So this guy's got a mat on for being essentially dethroned, because he was the guy of that universe. So he wants to destroy everything that the lights ever created. So he wants to undo existence. You know, he just doesn't want to snap out half the population for some altruistic ideology. No, he wants it gone. You know, everything that the light produced, everything it created, Earth, all these other worlds that are going to get revealed. He wants it all wiped out. So
that's the one thing I never understood about Thanos. Like, overpopulation is causing people to die because there's not enough resources. I have all this power. Could I, A, create more resources, or B, just kill everyone?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That never made sense to me.
The MCU's version of Thanos, they tried to make it more logical by being illogical. Like in the comic books, he snapped, you know, he dusted half the universe because he was trying to impress the physical personification of death. That was it.
Yeah. I don't mind origin stories, and I get in your pain you do crazy things, but if you're doing A because of B, it has to add up, or it doesn't.
I would just make more resources.
Right.
You know.
So, all right. So you mentioned that the obviously this isn't a one-off because the universe is large, but right. Will this be the only story for Sam himself?
No. Sam's going to have a very long stay in the Apogee universe. He's got stuff to do. I will give this little spoiler. It'll be revealed that he is the most powerful being in the universe.
Nice.
But he's never going to consciously use 100% of everything that he's capable of. So he's always going to be running at like 20% of what he's capable of, mainly because he doesn't know, and Proxus knows that if he discovers what he's truly capable of, then he possibly could undo existence too. So
so at some point in time, do you hope to expand so you can bring on more artists to speed the process up, or are you going to just keep?
Yeah, absolutely. These things cost money, and all of us artists are expensive all of a sudden. So I'll draw what I can. The rest I will farm out. I do keep a hand in the cookie jar at all times, so I was involved in every aspect of the process. Whether it's like if I come up with a plot and it's going to the writer, I'm constantly back and forth with the writer, tweaking scripts, editing. Like, okay, I don't really like where you're going with this, or hey, I'm expand on this right here because I feel this is going to be more interesting. You know, I think you're onto something there. The artwork, I'm like, hey man, can you kind of tweak that a little bit? You know, because that's a little bland. Maybe move the camera angle up or down, whatever. Maybe take it away from the center frame. Yeah, I want to get more artists. I want to get more writers, but they cost money. So really, it all starts with what I pull out of my brain and give them like a 2-page treatment of what I'm looking for as far as the story and a little bit of how I want it to go. And then get a writer and take the leash off of them.
So every literary universe, obviously the good ones, have their own internally consistent rules of science, technology, and magic. So what sort of tech and magic can we expect from the Apogee universe?
Oh, there's a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of weaponry it used to be. I've seen it go through the phase of theoretical to prototype to, hey man, everybody should have this. So there's a lot of tech in there that, because I do a lot of reading to, you know, what the hell is the name of that magazine? Oh, crap. Anyway, what's the name of that magazine? It's going to drive me nuts now. I'm going to wake up at like 2 a.m. like, oh, this is the name. But
yeah,
I do a lot of research on things that are being developed, no matter what phase they're in, whether they're the hypothetical phase, hey, this is what we kind of want to do, but we don't know if we have the power source or the resources to develop that. There's stuff that's in the prototype phase that it'll look cool. There's definitely going to be a lot of magic, but magic is nothing more than science that we don't really understand. And yeah, there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on. I wish I had a better answer. I
just want everyone to know that this time the dog barking is not Elvis. He's sleeping peacefully right beside me.
No, usually I have my headset on, and that little combination keeps my fur missiles from erupting.
So, of all the tech that you've invented for your universe, what would you want for daily use?
Oh, the nanites that Phantomhop has. That's what I would want. And the way the nanites work is they make you, like you can't be touched. It cures diseases. You could lose your arm, and these nanites will stimulate stem cells in the body to recreate the bone and tissue. You can't get sick. You're invincible. That's
nice.
all I would do for daily use. That and the grapple gun.
All right, so we'll start with the nanites, and then we'll go to the grappling gun. How would you abuse that tech if you had the nanites?
I would see what screwed up ways I could injure myself.
Yeah. Groundhog Day style?
Oh, yeah. It's like, okay, can I get hit by a train and survive? And then my biggest curiosity, and I've never tackled this in the book, is like, okay, if you sever my arm, do the nanites know that not to grow a new person from the arm and just grow from the stump? You know what I mean?
Ooh, yeah.
So if I cut my arm off, is there going to be 2 nicks?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, would it start at both sides?
Yeah. So, I cut my arm off or from anything, like I lose a finger, like, is there some sort of protocol? And I haven't tackled this yet in the book. And I really think I want to do that one of these days.
Like Hydra style.
Yeah. It's like, okay, so, I'm in an accident. My arm gets severed. Next thing you know, there's me being repaired in the car, and then I'm watching my arm grow a person out of it, with the same memories and consciousness that I have. Like that's how I would abuse it in the most screwed up ways.
All right. Now, what about the grappling gun? How would you abuse that?
Ooh, the grappling gun. I mean, there's so many ways you could abuse that. And I'm going to use it for lazy shit. So it's going to be like me sitting on the couch, grapple gun the mini fridge open, grapple gun my next beer, just total lazy stuff. That or traffic. I would use it to get out of traffic too.
Ooh, I could see that.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
All right, that's a good answer.
Now I'm gone.
All right, so you told us that you have some alien creatures and you fantastical creatures. So how do you go about creating these beings? Do you let your nightmares inspire you? Do you mimic nature? Something totally different, created out of whole cloth? How do you create
on
these?
This, like animal show on TikTok. This guy does these animal reviews, and lately he's been doing this stuff that's been found in like the crushing depths of the ocean, and these things are scary, So I get a lot of inspiration from that. I get a lot of inspiration from mythology. Mythology is a big one I like to pull from. The Greeks and Romans had some of the most scary frickin' type monsters in their mythology. So, hell, even Christianity, you had the Leviathan. That thing was, if you read what that thing is, it's crazy.
So there was a documentary a couple years ago. This guy was a known spelunker. So he was a photographer whose specialty was like diving and taking pictures.
Yeah.
So there was a crack in the ice on the South Pole that wasn't normally there, just shifting tides, and it opened a cave. So they said, well, let's go dive it. Just as point of reference, his camera alone was worth $1 million, and this was filmed probably early 2000s. So it was a lot of money back then. He goes diving down there, and he takes with him these climbing grapplings, that you would latch into the mountain so you can hook and climb. Yeah. And they were saying, oh, no, you don't need those. Well, ended up using them. Well, they dive to the bottom, and he's filming everything, and then a storm happened. So on the way up, he ended up using those grappling hooks to stop them from getting the bends somehow. Because I don't know not about diving, but the bends is, I guess, where you get air bubbles in the blood.
Well, it's a buildup of nitrogen in the blood.
Right. So they ended up being wrong. That's what saved him from getting the bends. But while he was down there, where it was so cold and so much pressure, they said nothing could live. And they didn't actually see anything alive, but they saw in the ice shells that were relatively recent. because the ice had split. So anything there that was refreezing over was new, to prove that there was some sort of mollusk that was living down there at the extreme depths and pressure. So like we're constantly finding new things like that at extreme places where we could investigate. A couple years ago, the sulfur flats, they found sulfur-based life forms there. I mean, it's microscopic, but
the microscopic. I remember reading that. It's like,
so it's always room to imagine.
Organism, I think is
so it's always room. And so I've actually heard someone posit that some of what we think of as like the monsters like the Yeti or the Loch Ness Monster are just ancient creatures that just, for whatever reason, a few of them remained. I don't know if I buy that. Yeah, but the whole xenobiology angle.
That when I'm creating aliens, I think about, what type of environment, like, we're carbon-based life form. So what if it's a silicon-based life form, or it's a crystalline-based life form? And that's where I get a lot of my ideas from. And then a lot of times it's just weird. Like, it was the beak of a squid that inspired me to create a whole race of aliens because of how that beak looked. It was just so menacing. I was like, oh, that would look cool. Like, they had like an exoskeleton and it's going to be based off this, and this is how it's going to look. And, a lot of hours at the drawing table, and it's like, oh man, that's really cool. It's like, okay, is he biped? Is he quadruped? Does he have tentacles? Do they have tendrils? Do they have this? Do they have that? How do they breathe? How do they see? What kind of light? What spectrum of light can they see in? Because what if they can't? And I have aliens that can't see in, our spectrum of light. So they have attachments, or they see in like IR, or, heat vision, or, just cool stuff like that. And a lot of studying on, just things in nature, animals and how they, like a rattlesnake, it has like sensors and stuff like that, and it picks up heat, and that's what affects its vision, to be such a deadly predator. So it's all those types of things that I'll reference or just straight up steal and make them aliens.
So we mentioned back in the beginning that this was going to be a crowdfunded project. So what kind of rewards are you expecting if people wanted to participate?
The tiers are going to have your basics. Hey, do you want a digital copy of the book? Do you want to just chip in $1 and get your name in the back for helping out? Posters. The thing I really like to do is I have a custom action figure made of Solarin Prime. And that'll be up for grabs, along with someone else. Oh, no, the artwork's in Brazil, so I'm not offering original artwork on this one, but I will offer, custom sketch cards, custom drawings, things like that.
Okay.
T-shirts. I think we need some T-shirts, maybe some swag. Tote bags, whatever, coffee mugs.
So obviously this is all speculative because you've got to design the campaign and put it together. We're recording this in advance so we can have this out while you're marketing it. Yeah. So obviously some of that may change, dear listener. So when you listen to this, if it makes you want to go click on the link and all that, just know that this is early stages of his plotting all of the levels.
Yeah, I'm actually talking it through with you right now as I'm writing stuff. So I'm like, oh, that'd be a good idea. But if you look at my previous campaigns, we offer a lot of cool stuff. Usually, I think it's cool.
Okay. So as this, no, it sounds cool. So as this interview winds down, was there anything about Solarian Prime that we didn't ask that you wanted to tell us?
No, I don't think so. I can't wait to get this guy out there to you guys, so I can start throwing him in these other books, because we're at that phase now in our business and our company where we're going to start throwing these characters into other people's books. So in Solarin Prime could show up in Bengali, or show up in Phantomhop, or show up in Crimson Guardians. So we're getting to that point. So I need to get this out so you guys get a little knowledge of the character, and hopefully you like him. He's really cool. I want him to be really personable and upbeat. So I think a lot of people are going to react positively to that. This very humble kid that's got all these just amazing cosmic powers and can do anything. And he's just like, he's real chill. He's like a real home guy. So, yeah, that's all I can say without giving too much away. General Grexis is scary as shit. So when he shows up in issue 2 or 3, he's a terrifying character.
Okay. Well, we've been at this for about an hour. So, Nick, can you tell listeners how they can find you? And as usual, all of his links will be in the show notes. And they are permanently linked on our YouTube account. So you can always go to the About Us section and follow him there as well. But can you tell listeners who might not have explored that yet or might be only listening on the audio how they can find you?
You can find me at Nick Garber Art on Facebook and Instagram. You can also find my work at Apogee Comics on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Apogee Comics on YouTube. Nick Garber Art, I think, is also my YouTube channel. I don't know. I usually stream everything through the company website anyway. You can find the company, Apogee Comics, at apogeecomics.net. And you can find me if you want to see me do just dumb stuff on TikTok. You can find me at the Mando_agent on TikTok. See me dress up as Star Wars characters and do goofy stuff.
Okay. And you can find us on our website at anchor.fm/blasters tech and tech blades, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. You can follow us on Twitter at SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. That is blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Don't be a stranger. Reach out if you've got anybody you want us to interview, if you've got any topics for fireside chats, if you've got any things you want us to review, movies, etc. I will say that any books that you send and say, hey, we'd really like you to review this, I'm just, life schedule being what it is, I kind of need audiobook, and Nick Garber does too, because while he's at work, he can listen, but he can't read all the time. So yeah, that if you want us to review something, just keep in mind that if it's not in audio, it'll be harder to do. And I know Doc listens to a lot while she's at work too. So that is right now our preferred method and when we pick what we're going to review. And we will be doing some of those in the near future. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades podcast. And finally, you can support the show over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. And you can support us there. If you put in the show note or in the comment section that is for the podcast, I will make sure we keep Nick Garber and Doc Cisca duly intoxicated. They will drink until their liver surrenders.
Popular mechanics.
He will drink until Popular Mechanics surrenders, and you know that's never happened. They've been going strong for decades. And you could support us for a one-time fee there, as little as 99 cents, or a reoccurring. You can also support us on our website at anchor.fm/blasters and tech blades. All of it does help. It keeps the lights on. The podcast isn't free to run. Between the editing software and the StreamYard's cost, we're running about $250 a year. We have reached the black for this year, so everything we get going forward for the last 2.5 months, because our year resets in December, will go towards covering next year. We want to thank all of our lovely backers who have made that happen, and hopefully we can keep going and keep this going, and the more the merrier. At some point in time, we are going to upgrade our StreamYard's account when it's available to have more than one host. Right now it's just me, and then they don't get into the back end right now. We're hoping when they offer that, we can upgrade so that way if life happens, Nick or Cisca can jump on and still record and still have all the settings and such. But I don't want to be the only one that has to do this. I think they've got something equally as important to offer. And like I said, we're working on more shows for you, so stick with us. So thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And because Cisca is not here to interrupt, we will tell you one more time, pineapple does not belong